Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. The announcement for Sacred 2 Remaster came out of the blue. It was announced during that THQ Nordic showcase, if I remember correctly, and I was really excited to get my hands on this one. I already made a couple of videos about Sacred games on the channel, and it's no secret that I'm a big fan of these ARPGs. Sacred 2 was, and it still is, one of my most favorite ARPGs ever, so I was wondering what they're going to do with this remaster.
That's all you have to offer?
The original game is still playable on the PC, but it was far from being amazing. There were some great community patches which would fix a lot of issues, on the PC at least. Console versions were pretty bad, and the user interface was inferior to PC version for many reasons. Not to mention that it ran in 30 FPS or even lower than that on consoles, so trying to remaster this game definitely makes sense. We're getting the same remastered version of the game across all platforms, including PC, PS5, Xbox S and X, as well as Nintendo Switch later in 2026. It's worth mentioning that the classic Sacred 2 won't be available for purchase anymore, but if you buy the remaster, it will automatically be added in your library. So you will have both versions of the game when you buy the remaster, which is pretty cool. The price of this game is $19.99 on Steam and $20.99 on consoles. This version of the game includes all content from previous expansions, a fresh new interface, full controller support on PC, as well as gameplay and graphical improvements.
What a great feeling!
I'm going to break down everything in this video so you know exactly what this remaster is all about. I'll make comparisons with the original game and talk about these new features in the first part of the video, and I'll also talk about the game in general later on.
That was easy.
Some people were wondering why they decided to remaster the second game instead of the first one. Well, according to some info we have, they barely even acquired the source code for this game, let alone a 20-year-old Sacred 1. Here's the thing though, while I was gathering as much as info as I could related to all the news we have about the Sacred IP in general, I learned that THQ Nordic, the publisher for the game, is trying to tease something.
Ankaria was always a little bit of a wild continent. We are here not only to revisit it, but we are shaping the next chapter. Sacred is back, but it's not the end, it's just the beginning. There are so much more things we have planned for Ankaria's future.
Yeah, that video has some cool moments like that, where they're trying to tease a potential future project related to Sacred. Since they already said that remastering Sacred 1 is nearly impossible, and I know for a fact they're not going to do anything with Sacred 3, maybe we are getting a brand new Sacred game. They also said they're not interested in making any new content for Sacred 2, so there's that as well. That leaves us with only one option, and that would be a brand new Sacred game. I certainly hope so, but we'll have to wait and see. Now let's focus on Sacred 2 Remaster, starting with all the new features and changes.
The next task is waiting.
The first and definitely one of the biggest features of the remaster is the brand new user interface. The original game had an okay UI for its time. It was functional and it's usable even today, but it was far from being perfect. However, there are still some things I prefer in the old user interface, but let's talk about the new UI first. I'm pretty sure that all versions of the remaster will have the same UI. No matter if you use a mouse and keyboard or a controller, the UI remains the same on the PC. I think it looks pretty good, and more importantly, it's much easier to navigate this time around, for the most part. It's easier to read important info about, well, everything. It also makes the presentation of the game a lot better in general, that's for sure. It gives it a nice modern touch that doesn't look out of place, and more importantly, it's functional and easy to use. There are some brand new UI elements, like being able to see the stats of all classes before you make a character, for example. You can see these stats in the attributes menu as well. The inventory has multiple sub-menus which will sort out your items, and so on. You'll find a couple of more similar improvements, which makes the overall user interface experience a lot more convenient. However, there are some bad things about it and some missing features. Navigating through some menus is almost impossible, at least with a controller. For example, if you want to use the smith services, I couldn't find a way to put a rune in my weapon, no matter how hard I tried. You can do it with no issues with the mouse, but it simply doesn't work with a controller. I tried pressing every button. There is no way to see the info about the unacquired combat arts. You can't even hover your mouse over the icon or use the controller to select them. Only when you learn the combat art you'll be able to see what it actually does in combat, which is definitely disappointing. You could read what all combat arts do in combat without even acquiring them in the original game. They mentioned there is a new way to see additional information when hovering tooltips, but I just couldn't find it, or it doesn't exist. There are no more floating menus, and you can't open multiple menus at once. It's not a huge deal, but it's worth mentioning anyway. The new UI also helps with selecting settings and actually making the game work properly on modern systems. Modern resolutions can be selected with no issues. You can run it in Full HD, 2K or 4K. I ran the game in 4K and everything worked great. There are no UI scaling issues or anything similar. When I tried booting up the original game and selecting a high resolution, the scroll down menu didn't even work properly. Speaking of scaling, the original game would have very small icons on the minimap when you bring it up. The remastered version of the game scales all of this properly according to the resolution. Overall, it's much easier to see everything now, regardless of the resolution choice. While there are no major graphical changes in the remaster, there are certainly some notable things related to visuals. First of all, we have a bunch of brand new graphical settings in the menu on PC. You can tweak, turn on and turn off a lot of these settings now. I just pushed most of the sliders to the max and played the game like that, but I also tried turning off some of them, which I didn't like. I could run this game on 4K with high settings with a stable frame rate. By default, most of them are set to 100%, but you can try to experiment a little bit and push them above that. This won't make a huge difference in visuals though, but there are definitely some noticeable improvements. For example, they included brand new textures for characters, which make them look way sharper, the draw distance is improved, and so on. I still think even the original game looks very good after all of those years. The stylized artistic style made the game age very well, if you ask me. Speaking of settings, the remastered version has a better working camera. I'm pretty sure that's one of many improvements from the community patches, which are also included in the remastered version. It almost allows you to play the game as a third-person RPG if you want to, but it also improves the regular camera. Even though the draw distance is improved, you'll see a lot of pop-in in the distance if you play the game like this. I would still recommend turning off the camera follow feature for a much better gameplay experience. Physics X engine has been updated from version 1 to version 5. I'm pretty sure this is why we can see some more aggressive ragdoll physics in the game now compared to the original. This can be a bit glitchy and silly, but overall it makes the gameplay slightly more fun, I would say. I mean, who doesn't love good ragdoll physics?
You annoying little creatures.
I had some visual glitches, bugs and more than a few crashes to desktop. For example, my skeleton fortification spell has a visual glitch. If I move closer to any rivers, my character will start jumping around the map and some of the abilities can be abused in a similar way. So the remastered version is not without its problems. Crashing to desktop is the biggest problem I had with the remaster. The game crashed quite a bit actually, but I never lost a lot of progress because of the autosave system and I also manually saved a lot. Hopefully they'll be able to fix these issues in future patches. I played the original game for so many hours with mouse and keyboard, so it was almost like playing an entirely different game like this. It plays really well with the controller, I must say, and I enjoyed the gameplay a lot. I mean, sure, the original game was working on a controller as well, on consoles at least. But the remastered version brought a lot of improvements, so it makes the experience way better. Console players will have the same interface and all the improvements mentioned. So, what are those gameplay improvements they mentioned? The original Sacred 2 had a pretty interesting gameplay loop, but it was always a bit janky experience. The remastered version of the game improves the responsiveness of the controls in a couple of ways, which improves the overall gameplay experience. But how did they do that exactly? Well, let's find out.
Get out of my sight.
You should be able to see the more responsive control scheme from this example. Moving your character around is way snappier, because it seems like they sped up some turning animations. Now you can make twitchy and abrupt movements, turn your character to the opposite side much faster, and so on. It instantly feels like a major improvement, especially on mouse and keyboards. It works well with the controller as well, but it seems like the mouse movements allows you to be a bit more flexible when turning around. Another change that made controlling your character less janky is the body block feature, or the lack of it. In the original game, characters would body block you, which made the controls a lot jankier than it should be, especially in combats. It's the same for enemies and friendly NPCs, but it's way worse in combat when you're fighting enemies and trying to kite them or just move around the battlefields. The remastered version has almost completely reduced this, as you can see from this example. Now you'll be able to move through enemies and friendly NPCs with little to no issue. The reason why I said almost completely is because you can still sense it a little bit. Not even close like in the original game, but I would say it's not 100% gone. Nevertheless, this particular tweak makes the combat and the controls way smoother. You won't get stuck much like before, and your character won't freak out in crowded fights now. Unlike in the original, you'll always feel like you're in the full control of your character now. And if you're a ranged character, you'll find it easier to kite enemies in general. Now, Sacred 2 was always a little bit janky. Those new gameplay improvements with the control scheme are definitely a welcoming change. But there are a couple of more things in the remaster which makes it feel janky. For example, some jumping combat arts will glitch out in certain situations. If you just keep moving forward and use this skill, your character will instantly teleport forward instead of performing the animation. You can turn your character around while being animation locked when casting buffs, and so on. Those are pretty much all the problems I found with the gameplay in the remaster.
Who do you take me for?
Having these issues is not so surprising, considering they had to rewrite the code for 64-bit systems. Like I said before, I certainly hope to see a patch or two that will eliminate these problems. This is the review version of the game, by the way, so maybe they'll have a day 1 patch for the release version, I'm not sure. But here's another notable gameplay improvement in the remaster. The path finding for NPCs has been completely rewritten and improved. Every populated place in the game has a lot of NPCs walking around doing chores and various activities. Original game had this as well to some extent, but certainly not like this. This makes every city and smaller town or outpost a lot more alive. It's almost giving me some MMO vibes when you see other players running around. Now, this could be a small thing for many people and you might not even notice this. However, in my personal opinion, this is an amazing update. Even the original game had a great open world which felt alive, and this update makes it even better. It can be really silly if you start following these NPCs and see what they're up to, but then again, the whole game was already very silly in general. Even vendors will move around quite a bit or even approach you in some situations, which can be slightly useful. It's not exactly a full-blown NPC schedule like in some third-person RPGs like Oblivion or Gothic games, but it's pretty close to that. Very impressive stuff for an ARPG, and I don't remember seeing anything similar in other top-down Diablo-like RPGs. A genre of games that's hyper-focused on endgame systems and action nowadays, and very little on features like this, which would improve the world building in general. The new pathfinding update also affects NPC followers. These kinds of quests are very common in Sacred 2, you'll get to have a bunch of followers when you take side quests. You'll never lose those NPCs this time around, and it's easy to keep the track of them, whether you're traveling on foot, on a mount, or even teleporting around. It's not like the original game was horrible when it comes to this, it was functional. However, follower NPCs would usually get left behind the player and having troubles to keep up. Well, that's no longer the case. You'll see these NPCs going in front of you most of the time, and they will catch up faster with you if left behind. And those will be all the major changes and updates in the remaster that I wanted to cover.
Mission completed.
You can find a lot more actually if you dig into patch notes, but I focused on bigger changes and tweaks which are more important for the gameplay experience. Now let's talk a little bit about the game in general. Mind you, I already made a couple of in-depth videos about this game in general, so you can check out those videos as well for my in-depth thoughts. If you never played Sacred 2, I would heavily recommend trying it out if you like RPGs. It's a pretty unique take on the ARPG genre. The game offers you 7 playable classes. Each of these classes have unique playstyles and 3 different skill trees with passive and active spells. All spells have different modifiers which can be unlocked by getting new skills when leveling up. All of these classes have different loot, starting positions on the map with a slightly different story in the beginning, unique mounts and so on. And they are not exactly your typical RPG classes, they try to make them a little bit more unique. For example, Temple Guardian is a mix of melee and range playstyles with some unique spells and animations. Shadow Warrior is like a mix of Barbarian and Rogue classes, and it's usually the class that I like to play a lot. Before you begin the game, you have the choice between the light and shadow campaigns. While the main quest remains the same for the most part, regardless of this choice, you will have different choices to make at certain points. Sacred 2 features a massive open world to explore, which can offer you hundreds of hours of content. You'll find quests behind every corner of the map. And even though a lot of them seem like your typical RPG busywork, they have a very nice variety, and they usually offer you some different choices and outcomes. The game has around 100 main quests and 600 side quests, which is kind of insane. I usually do a lot of side quests on my playthroughs, but definitely not all of them. This game is very heavy on the humor, and it certainly doesn't take itself too seriously.
I was able to accomplish a small wonder today. I managed to make the air smelly out of nothing.
You'll find a lot of silly quests, and I think this only makes the game more fun to play in general. Some of these side quests will branch out into more quests depending on the choices you make. You have a great freedom of choice, not only when it comes to most quests, but with how you explore the open world itself. There are so many different locations to visit and explore, and if you like open worlds, you're probably going to love this one. It's in my top 2 open worlds in ARPGs, along with Grim Dawn. Even though this game is very silly, it still remains very immersive. There is a great soundtrack playing in the background, the world still looks beautiful, and it feels like a full-blown RPG. I think a lot of new ARPGs lack this, they just feel like a hack and slash fiesta. Speaking of which, the combat has an interesting combo system which allows you to cast multiple spells at once with a press of a button. You don't have to use this feature, but I always do because I think it's pretty cool and useful. You also get the freedom to make different combos by combining your available spells, or combat arts as the game calls them. At the first sight, the game might seem like it has a typical ARPG progression, but Sacred 2 does things a little bit differently. In order to learn spells for a class, you'll need to find runes, which are random drops, or they can be obtained from a certain vendor. Stacking them will improve and level up your spells, while every level up gives you stat points. There are a bunch of different skills to get, and they can be leveled up as well by investing leveling up points. The cooldown on spells is one of the main things to worry about, and pretty much everything you do is somehow related to this. Equipping items on your character and increasing the power of your spells will affect the cooldown. All of these new gameplay improvements in the remaster has certainly refreshed the combat experience. The action combat is not exactly on the level of modern ARPGs, it's certainly a bit dated. But Sacred 2 had features which were ahead of their time as well. For example, you're able to explore this open world with different mounts. Not only that, but every class can get unique mounts which can even allow you to cast combat arts without the need to dismount. In order to get these mounts, you'll have to do a unique set of side quests. The story of the game is a bit generic, but like I said before, it's all about humor and silly characters and quests. The world feels so alive, and there is something happening behind every corner. You can enter many houses and buildings, which is another pretty immersive feature, which makes Sacred 2 feel like a proper RPG and not a grinding simulator. NPCs will fight each other in the open world, and as I mentioned before, there is a lot of activity now in all populated places. So yeah, that would sum it up pretty much, but like I said, feel free to check out one of my past videos about Sacred games for more in-depth info. Overall, I would recommend playing this remaster version if you're a fan of Sacred series, but also if you're a new player looking for a new ARPG. I mean, the game is not exactly new, it's pretty old actually, but these new updates improve the experience quite a bit. It's still a remaster and not a remake, so don't expect miracles. If you didn't like the original game, I highly doubt you're going to like the remaster. I love it, and I'll spend a lot more hours playing it, that's for sure.
That's all you have to offer?
Anyway, tell me your opinion about this remaster in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.